The phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but it had my university's area code. I picked it up, expecting it to be about my financial aid, or maybe a club meeting. Instead, a calm, measured voice on the other end said, "Hello, is this my name?" I confirmed it was. "This is Dean Thompson from the Academic Integrity Office. We need to discuss your recent research paper." My heart did this weird little flutter like a trapped bird. My research paper, the one I'd poured my soul into for the past 6 months, the one I finally submitted last week. "Oh, okay," I managed to say, trying to sound normal, like I wasn't suddenly bracing for impact. "Is there a problem?" "Here has been a serious allegation of plagiarism," Dean Thompson said. The words hit me like a physical blow. Plagiarism? Me? It didn't make any sense. I'd cited everything. I'd run it through multiple checkers. I was meticulous. My entire academic career, my future, was built on honesty and hard work. Plagiarism was the absolute worst thing you could be accused of in academia. It was the kiss of death. "Plagiarism?" I repeated, my voice a little too high. "That's impossible. I wrote every single word. I sourced everything." There was a pause, a short, uncomfortable silence on the line.
Then Dean Thompson said, "We understand that this is a serious accusation. My name, however. The issue isn't about your sourcing. It's about authorship."
Authorship? What in the world was he talking about? My name was on the paper. My name was the only name on the paper, or so I thought. "What do you mean, authorship?" I asked, confusion warring with the rising tide of panic. "We received a complaint. It alleges that a significant portion of your submitted paper, the socioeconomic impact of climate change on coastal communities in the Gulf region, was not solely your work. Specifically, the complaint states that another student, Sarah Jenkins, was a co-author whose contribution was not properly acknowledged, or rather, that you claimed her work as your own." My blood ran cold. Sarah Jenkins. The name hit me like a frozen brick to the face. Sarah. My mentor, my friend. Person I looked up to, who'd guided me through so many tough spots in my first few years of college. Person who, until this very second, I trusted implicitly. "Sarah Jenkins," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "That's crazy." Sarah didn't write a single word of that paper. She didn't contribute anything beyond giving me a few general pointers weeks ago. Like, make sure your introduction is strong, or check your citation. "Complaint, my name," Dean Thompson continued, his voice still maddeningly calm, "states otherwise. It claims that Miss Jenkins was an integral part of the research and writing process, and that her name was removed from the final submission." This was a nightmare. This was a twisted, sick joke. Sarah Jenkins had her name on my research paper? A number that wasn't right. Wait, he said her name was removed. That means it was on there at some point. But it wasn't. It couldn't have been. I submitted the paper myself. I checked the title page a dozen times. My name was the only one. Then it clicked. A sickening, horrifying realization. My stomach dropped to my feet. Sarah didn't want her name on it. She put her name on it. And then complained that I took it off. But why? "Dean Thompson," I said, trying to steady my voice, "I am telling you, Sarah Jenkins had no hand in writing that paper. I did the research. I did the analysis. I wrote every paragraph, every sentence." "This is a false accusation. Miss Jenkins has presented evidence that suggests otherwise," he said. "She provided us with an earlier draft of the paper that clearly lists her as a co-author on the title page. She also provided email correspondence and shared documents that indicate a collaborative effort. My head started to spin. An earlier draft? Anti-fall correspondence. Shared documents. What was he talking about? We hadn't collaborated on any. She hadn't sent me a single email about this specific paper. Not one that suggested co-authorship. Shared documents. The only thing we ever shared was coffee during study breaks. That's impossible, I repeated, feeling like a broken record. Tea here is no way. I never shared any draft with her that had her name on it. I never agreed to co-author anything with her. She gave me some general advice like any senior student might. But that's it. We understand your denial. My name, however, given the evidence, we need to schedule a formal meeting to discuss this matter further. We'll need you to come in, explain your side, and present any evidence you have to refute these claims. This is a serious accusation. Plagiarism carries severe consequences, including suspension or even expulsion. Expulsion. The word echoed in my mind, cold and sharp. My parents' faces flashed before my eyes, the sacrifices they'd made, the pride they had in me. All of it gone because of Sarah. Sarah, who was supposed to be my friend, my mentor. She was trying to ruin me. But why? When is this meeting? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Panic was still there, but now it was mixed with a cold, simmering rage. We'll send you an email with the details and the specific allegations tomorrow morning, Dean Thompson replied. In the meantime, I advise you not to discuss this matter with Miss Jenkins or any other parties involved, as it could be seen as an attempt to influence the investigation. Influence the investigation? Influence the investigation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Sarah right now and demand to know what kind of sick game she was playing. But I couldn't. I was trapped, accused of something I didn't do by someone I trusted, and now I couldn't even talk to her about it. I mumbled an okay and hung up the phone. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I stared at the wall, but all I could see was Sarah's smiling face, the one I'd always seen as kind and supportive. Now it seemed like a mask, hiding something sinister. My research paper, my masterpiece. The culmination of months of late nights, endless reading, and painstaking data analysis. It was supposed to be my ticket to grad school, my shining achievement. And now it was being used as a weapon against me. A weapon wielded by someone who was supposed to be on my side. I felt a wave of nausea. The air in my dorm room felt heavy, suffocating. Plagiarism. Expulsion. My entire future dissolving into dust. And all because Sarah Jenkins decided to put her name on my work and then claim I stole it. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of sabotage. And I had no idea why she would do something so terrible. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but there was none. Just the horrifying truth. My life was about to become a living hell, and she was the one holding the match. Before the storm, there was the calm. Calm of a student deeply absorbed in a project, genuinely excited about making a small contribution to knowledge. My research paper, the one that was now apparently a source of major academic scandal, started out as a spark of curiosity, a nagging question in the back of my mind during a particularly boring environmental science lecture. Professor was droning on about general climate models, and I kept thinking about the news reports I'd seen about coastal towns, the ones slowly disappearing under rising sea levels. It wasn't just about the land, I realized. It was about the people, their livelihoods, their history, their entire way of life. How did that even work? What did it feel like to know your home would soon be underwater? What economic and social structures crumbled first? That thought, that little flicker, grew into an obsession. I started doing preliminary research, just for fun, just to satisfy my own curiosity. I spent hours in the library, not for classes, but because I genuinely wanted to understand. I read academic papers, government reports, local news articles from communities that were already experiencing the effects of rising tides. The more I read, the more complex and heartbreaking the issue became. This wasn't just a paper for a grade, this was a passion project. I saw a gap in the existing literature. Most studies focused on the scientific aspects of climate change, or on large-scale economic models. Few truly delved into the granular, human-level socioeconomic impact on specific communities and how they adapted, or failed to adapt. I wanted to tell their stories, backed by solid data. I decided to make it my senior thesis project. This was a huge undertaking, much bigger than any regular term paper. It would involve primary research, including interviews with community leaders and residents in a specific vulnerable region. I chose the Gulf region, specifically some lesser-known communities in Louisiana and Mississippi, because they were ground zero for so many environmental challenges. The first few months were just planning. I spent weeks refining my research questions, developing a methodology, and navigating the university's ethics board for human subjects research. It was tedious, bureaucratic work, but I was so invested. Every hurdle felt like a step closer to telling an important story. Then came the actual research. This was the most demanding part. I traveled during my spring break, using my own savings and a small grant I managed to secure from an undergraduate research fund. I spent days in these small towns, talking to people who had lost everything, or who were watching their ancestral lands slowly erode into the sea. Collected data on local economies, fishing industries, property values, and community resilience. I recorded interviews, meticulously transcribed them, and coded the qualitative data. I spent evenings poring over historical maps and satellite imagery, tracking the literal disappearance of land. It was emotionally draining work. I heard stories of profound loss, but also incredible resilience and ingenuity. I wanted my paper to capture that nuance. I wanted it to be more than just statistics. I wanted it to be a voice for these communities. Back on campus, the real writing began. This was where the magic and the pain truly happened. I would spend entire days, sometimes 14 or 16 hours straight, just writing. My dorm room became a chaotic nest of research papers, highlighted printouts, and half-empty coffee mugs. I lived and breathed the data. I sculpted paragraphs, polished sentences, and meticulously cited every single source. I used specialized software for my statistical analysis, double-checking every calculation. I aimed for perfection. I wanted this paper to be publishable. I envisioned presenting it at conferences, maybe even expanding it into a master's thesis. This wasn't just a grade. It was my academic identity, my first real foray into serious scholarship. It was a piece of me, distilled onto 70-odd pages. During this intense period, I mostly kept to myself. My friends knew I was working on the paper, but they didn't really understand the scope of it. I'd occasionally vent about a difficult data set or a writer's block, but mostly I just worked. I did, however, occasionally talk to Sarah Jenkins about it. She was a senior, already accepted into a prestigious grad program, and seemed to have it all figured out. We were in a few of the same general science classes, and she had always been friendly, approachable, and intelligent. I saw her as someone who had made it in the academic world. I remember showing her my initial proposal months ago. Just a quick chat over coffee. She gave me some general advice like, make sure your literature review is comprehensive, or Consider the ethical implications carefully. Nothing specific, nothing that would even remotely suggest co-authorship. She was just being a nice upperclassman sharing a few tips. I appreciated it. I genuinely did. As I got deeper into the writing, I'd sometimes run into her in the library. She'd see me surrounded by books and ask, "Still buried in the climate change paper?" I'd nod, maybe give a tired smile. She'd offer a quick "keep at it, it sounds really important." Innocent stuff. General encouragement. The kind of encouragement you'd give to any peer struggling with a big project. I never shared full drafts with her, never. I was meticulous about that. This was my project, my data, my analysis, my writing. I might have mentioned a particular challenge, like struggling with a complex statistical model. And she might have said something generic like, "Have you tried looking at X software?" But that was the extent of it. No collaborative work. No shared documents. No co-authorship discussions ever. I finished the paper last week. I felt a surge of triumph, of immense pride. I printed it out, feeling the weight of the pages in my hands. It was perfect. It was mine. I submitted it, breathed a sigh of relief, and allowed myself to finally relax, to sleep more than 4 hours a night. That feeling lasted exactly 5 days. 5 days of peace before Dean Thompson's call shattered everything. My masterpiece, born from curiosity and shaped by dedication, was now a weapon aimed squarely at my head. And the person wielding it was Sarah Jenkins, the one who supposedly offered harmless encouragement. It was impossible to reconcile the kind, helpful Sarah with the person now trying to destroy my future. The betrayal was so deep, so unexpected, it felt like a physical wound. Sarah Jenkins. Her name was a constant loop in my head after that call. Sarah. It echoed, sometimes like a soft whisper, sometimes like a guttural scream. How could she? Why would she? Questions gnawed at me, turning my stomach into a knot of dread and anger. I first met Sarah during my freshman year. She was a junior then, a star student in the environmental science department. She seemed to know everything. She was the kind of person who raised her hand in every class, not to show off, but because she genuinely had insightful questions or contribution. She was articulate, poised, and always seemed to have a confident yet approachable smile. I was shy back then, a little intimidated by college life. I felt like a small fish in a very big, smart pond. Sarah, on the other hand, was already swimming with the sharks, but in a good way. She was involved in multiple research labs, presented at student conferences, and somehow still found time to volunteer for campus environmental initiatives. She was everything I aspired to be. Our first real interaction was during a department mixer. I was standing awkwardly by the punch bowl, feeling out of place, when she came up to me. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "You ask really thoughtful things. You seem genuinely interested in this stuff." That small compliment, that simple recognition, meant the world to me. From that day on, Sarah became my unofficial mentor. She didn't formally take me under her wing, but she was always available for advice. If I was struggling with a concept in class, she'd explain it patiently. If I was worried about choosing my major, she'd share her own experiences and give me perspective. She showed me how to navigate the university's research opportunities, how to approach professors, how to write a compelling personal statement for scholarship applications. She was incredibly generous with her time and knowledge. She helped me secure my first on-campus research assistant position, something that was crucial for my resume. She proofread a few of my earlier papers, catching grammatical errors and suggesting ways to strengthen my arguments. She never asked for anything in return, She just seemed genuinely happy to help me succeed. I saw her as an older sister figure, someone who genuinely cared about my academic growth. I remember one specific conversation early on when I was feeling overwhelmed. I was questioning if I was smart enough to be in such a demanding program. Sarah sat me down and told me, "You have a natural curiosity. My name. That's more important than anything. You are a hard worker and you care about the impact of your work. That's what truly matters." Her words resonated deeply and gave me the confidence I needed to push through. We often ate lunch together in the dining hall or grabbed coffee between classes. Talk about everything: classes, professors, future plans, even personal struggles. I told her about my family, my dreams, my fear. I confided in her, shared parts of myself I rarely showed to anyone else. She seemed to do the same, sharing her own anxieties about grad school applications or the pressure to perform. It felt like a genuine, reciprocal friendship. It's why the betrayal felt so much worse. It wasn't just a stranger pulling a fast one. It was Sarah, a person who had seen me at my most vulnerable, who had cheered me on, who I had admired and trusted completely. Now, looking back, I am trying to retrace every interaction, every casual comment, every shared moment, searching for a clue. Was there a hint, a flicker of something predatory in her eyes? A moment where her help was actually something more sinister? When I started my climate change paper, I remember telling her about the idea. She seemed interested. "Oh, that's a really important topic," she said. "Not many people focus on the socioeconomic angle. You should definitely pursue that." She encouraged me just like she always did. She gave me general tips, as I mentioned before, the kind of advice anyone would offer. Make sure your literature review is thorough. Consider qualitative data as well as quantitative. Don't forget the policy implications. Nothing that would ever constitute co-authorship. I never asked her for specific help with my paper. I asked her for general advice on navigating academia, and she provided it. Generously, or so I thought. Now, Dean Thompson's words rang in my ears. She provided us with an earlier draft of the paper that clearly lists her as a co-author on the title page. She also provided email correspondence and shared documents that indicate a collaborative effort. This was the part that baffled me most. I never shared a full draft with her. Never. Not one with her name on it. I worked on my paper on my personal laptop, using my own university account for cloud storage. I was very particular about who saw my work before it was finished. I hadn't even shown it to my thesis advisor until I had a near final draft. Could she have somehow accessed my files? It seemed impossible. My university accounts were secure. My laptop was password protected. I hadn't left it unattended in a public place where she could have easily copied files. Then a chilling thought crossed my mind. The time I was sick. I had a really bad flu for about a week, maybe 2 months ago. I was barely conscious, just lying in bed feeling miserable. Sarah, being the good friend she was, brought me soup and some notes from classes I missed. She even offered to help me with some of my assignments, just general things like typing up notes or organizing some files. I politely declined, saying I just needed to rest. But she was in my room. My laptop was on my desk. Was it possible she did something then? While I was too weak and sick to notice, the thought sent a shiver down my spine. It was a paranoid thought. But suddenly every past interaction with Sarah was tainted. Every kind gesture, every helpful piece of advice, now felt like a calculated move in a long, elaborate scheme. Was this her plan all along? To build trust, to gain access, to then claim my work as her own. It seemed too elaborate, too cruel. But what other explanation was there? kind, supportive mentor I knew was gone, replaced by a ghost of deception. The friend I trusted was now the enemy trying to destroy my future. The snake had been in my garden all along, hiding in plain sight, charming me with false promises, only to strike when I was most vulnerable. Pain of this betrayal was sharper than any fear of expulsion. It was like a part of my soul had been ripped out and stomped on, and I still couldn't comprehend why. The email arrived exactly as Dean Thompson promised. It landed in my inbox like a digital bomb. The subject line: formal allegation of academic dishonesty. My name. I took a deep breath, my hand shaking as I clicked it open. The email was dense, filled with official jargon. It summarized the accusation. Sarah Jenkins claimed co-authorship of the socioeconomic impact of climate change on coastal communities in the Gulf region, and alleged that I had removed her name from the final submission, thereby misrepresenting her contributions and engaging in academic theft. Then came the evidence list. This was where the real gut punch landed. Shared draft 1.2 dated 3 months ago. An attachment of a PDF file titled Climate Change Paper. Then draft 1.2, that my name. Sarah Jenkins. .pdf. I clicked it, my blood running cold. It looked like an early version of my paper. Maybe the introduction and first 2 body paragraphs. And right there on the title page beneath my name was co-authored by Sarah Jenkins. My breath hitched. This was impossible. I had never ever created such a file. My file names were meticulously organized, and none of them ever included Sarah's name. This wasn't just a file I didn't recognize. It was a file that incriminated me. Enkt 100 correspondence various dates. The email listed several dates and snippets of emails. One was from Sarah to me, dated 4 months ago. Hey, just checking in on the climate change paper. Do you want to meet up to discuss the methodology section? I have some thoughts on the survey design. I remembered that email. It was a general offer to help. I had replied, "Thanks, Sarah, that's really kind. I am still hammering out the lit review, but I'll let you know when I get to methodology." It was a polite brush-off, not an acceptance of collaboration. Another snippet, dated 3 months ago from Sarah to me. Attached is draft 1.2. Let me know what you think of the changes I made to the intro and the framing of the research question. I also added a few ideas for the policy implications section. This email I had no memory of receiving. I searched my inbox frantically. It wasn't there, it simply wasn't. But Dean Thompson's email contained a screenshot of it, complete with my email address as the recipient. This was terrifying. It meant she had faked it, or somehow accessed my account and deleted the original. Third, from me to Sarah. Dated 2.5 months ago. Hey Sarah, thanks for your input on draft 1.2. I am reviewing your suggestions now and will incorporate what I can. The policy implications additions are great. This one was even more chilling. I had definitely not sent this. It was a complete fabrication. My heart pounded. She wasn't just claiming co-authorship. She was manufacturing evidence to support it. Shared cloud document link, dated 2 months ago. A link to a Google Docs file, supposedly a shared working document of the paper. I clicked it. It opened to a blank document titled Climate Change Project, Shared Workspace. The activity history, visible on the side panel, showed Sarah Jenkins created document, and then, a few days later, Sarah Jenkins edited document, followed by you viewed document. It looked like she had created an empty document, then put some placeholder text, and then I had supposedly viewed it. Due viewed document part was the worst. It meant my university account, my legitimate login, had accessed this document. But I had never done it. The more I read, the more I felt like I was drowning. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, deliberate setup. Sarah wasn't just alleging I removed her name. She was fabricating an entire collaborative history. The shared draft 1.2 was the most damning. How did she get an earlier draft of my paper with her name on it? The only time she could have possibly gotten access to my computer was when I was sick. I remember her coming to my room. I was half asleep, feverish. She brought me soup. She sat by my desk for a bit, pretending to study or organize her own notes, while I drifted in and out of sleep. My laptop was there on the desk, probably open, maybe not even locked. I wouldn't have noticed anything. Could she have quickly copied a file, changed the title page, and then put it back? It seemed like a lot of effort for someone who was supposed to be a friend. But she was tech savvy. She knew how to navigate file systems. And adding a name to a title page is a simple edit. The fake emails were harder to explain. Could she have spoofed my email address? Or had she gotten into my account? I immediately changed all my passwords: university, email, cloud storage. The idea that she might have had access to my digital life for months, planting these seeds of evidence, made my skin crawl. The you-viewed document on the Google Docs file suggested she might have even remotely logged into my account to click that link, just to create a digital footprint. My mind raced back to the conversations we had. Was she subtly trying to get details about my paper? Was she asking about my progress? Not out of friendly interest, but to gauge how much she needed to contribute to her fake drafts. She'd ask, "How far along are you?" And I'd say, "Almost done with the data analysis section." Was that her cue to then create a fake draft 1.2 that covered the introduction and early analysis, making it seem like she was part of that initial stage? The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. She didn't just want credit. She wanted to destroy me for not giving it to her, even though she didn't deserve it. It was a preemptive strike. She created the fake collaboration, then complained that I removed her name, twisting the narrative completely. It was like she was setting up a trap, and I walked right into it unknowingly. The meeting with Dean Thompson was scheduled for 2 days from now. I had less than 48 hours to somehow prove that this elaborate scheme was a lie. How do you prove a negative? How do you prove you didn't collaborate? How do you prove you didn't send an email that apparently exists? My phone buzzed. It was a text from a mutual friend, Liam. "Hey, you okay? Sarah seems really upset about something. Said she had a big fight with you over your paper." My heart pounded. She was already spreading her version of the story, playing the victim. My hands curled into fists. This wasn't just a battle for my academic future. This was a battle for my reputation, for my truth. And it was clear Sarah Jenkins was playing dirty, pulling out all the stops to make sure I lost everything. The venom in her actions was palpable. I felt utterly helpless, trapped in a web of her lies, with no idea how to untangle myself. The 48 hours leading up to the meeting with Dean Thompson felt like an eternity in a blink of an eye all at once. My mind was a chaotic storm of panic, anger, and a growing sense of paranoia. Every interaction, every past conversation, every digital footprint felt scrutinized, twisted, and weaponized. Sleep was impossible. My dorm room, once a sanctuary for focused work, now felt like a prison. Every shadow seemed to hold Sarah's cunning smile. Every notification on my phone made me jump, expecting another blow. My appetite vanished. The world felt muffled, distant, as if I was watching my own life unravel from behind a thick pane of glass. My first instinct after the initial shock was to find proof. Proof that I worked alone. Proof that Sarah's evidence was fabricated. But how do you prove something didn't happen when someone else has manufactured evidence that it did? It felt like trying to catch smoke. I started by meticulously going through my own digital files. Every version of my paper, from the first outline to the final submission. I had a meticulous system of dated versions. Climate change, paper Dagspraft, 01_20,230,915. Docs, climate change paper theft analysis VV, 3_20,231,101. Docs, and so on. None of them, absolutely none, had Sarah's name on them, and certainly no draft 1.2 that looked anything like the one she submitted. My version numbering was completely different. That was something, a small detail, but a detail nonetheless. Then I moved to my email. I searched every single keyword. Sarah Jenkins, climate change paper, co-author, collaboration methodology. My inbox was clean. No emails from her discussing specific contributions to my paper. No emails from me confirming receipt of draft 1.2. No record of that faked email where I supposedly thanked her for her input. It was as if those emails, which she somehow produced for Dean Thompson, had never existed in my inbox. This could be powerful evidence if I could prove they were fake. But how? Email headers? That was beyond my technical knowledge. The Google Docs link troubled me most. The fact that my account had viewed it. I tried to remember if I had ever clicked on a suspicious link, even accidentally. Or if I had ever left my computer unlocked while connected to university Wi-Fi in a public place. Nothing came to mind. It felt like a ghost in the machine. Did she access my computer remotely? Or log in as me? That would be a serious security breach, but how could I prove it? I wanted to confide in someone. My parents, my closest friends. But Dean Thompson's warning echoed. Do not discuss this matter with Miss Jenkins or any other parties involved, as it could be seen as an attempt to influence the investigation. My friends were mutual friends with Sarah. If I told them, it might get back to her. And I didn't want to jeopardize my case further. I was isolated, alone with this terrible secret. The paranoia started to set in deeper. Every time I saw someone from my department, I wondered if they knew. If Sarah had already spread her version of the story. Was my reputation already in tatters? I felt exposed, vulnerable, like everyone was looking at me, judging me. I tried to reconstruct the timeline of Sarah's involvement. It was always general encouragement, never specific, concrete help with my paper. She'd offered to look over my thesis proposal once, early on, before I'd even started the serious research. I politely declined, saying I wanted my advisor to be the first one to see it. It was a casual offer, I thought, a friendly gesture. Now, it felt like an attempt to get her foot in the door. To establish some form of collaboration early on. The only time she had physical access to my computer was when I was sick. My laptop was on my desk, open, probably not even locked, because I was too ill to care. Could she have quickly copied my entire paper in a flash drive? Then later, added her name to a fake title page? And then created a fake draft 1.2 that she would then circulate as evidence? It was meticulously planned. It was terrifying. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how calculated her actions were. She built my trust over years. She was the one I looked up to. She knew my strengths and weaknesses. She knew how much this paper meant to me. She knew how meticulous I was with my files. It was almost as if she was leveraging my own systems against me. The thought of facing Dean Thompson, a man whose job it was to uphold academic integrity, filled me with dread. How could I make him believe? Her evidence seemed so concrete. The faked draft, the faked emails, the faked shared document, painted a picture of a student, Miu, who had unethically removed a co-author's name. It was a complete inversion of the truth. I spent hours compiling my own evidence. Screenshots of my own file history, showing no draft 1.2 with her name. My university cloud storage history, showing I had never created or shared a document with her. My full email history with her, showing only general friendly chats, no specific collaboration. It felt so flimsy against her manufactured proof. I found my original research proposal, submitted months ago, listing only my name as the author. I found my ethics board approval, also only listing me. These were official university documents, predating her alleged collaboration. Would that be enough? I felt like I was gathering pebbles to fight a rock slide. As the hours ticked down, a cold, hard resolve began to mix with the panic. I couldn't just crumble. I couldn't let her win. This wasn't just about avoiding expulsion. This was about my integrity, my honor, my very identity as a scholar. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let someone else steal my achievement and then turn me into a villain. Sarah Jenkins wasn't just an anonymous accuser. She was the architect of my potential downfall, the betrayer who had used my trust as a weapon. And I was going to fight her with everything I had. The meeting was tomorrow. It was time to face the music and try to make them hear my truth over her carefully crafted lies. The next morning, I walked into the Dean of Students' office, my stomach churning with nerves and a quiet, desperate resolve. The air was thick with the weight of the situation. Dean Thompson sat at the head of a large, polished table. To his right, a stern-looking woman I recognized as the head of the Academic Integrity Committee. And to his left, Sarah Jenkins, looking solemn and slightly tearful. Her eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of something unreadable in them before she looked away. She had mastered the art of playing the victim. Dean Thompson began, his voice formal. Thank you for coming. My name, as you know, we're here to discuss the plagiarism allegations regarding your paper. The socioeconomic impact of climate change on coastal communities in the Gulf region. Miss Jenkins has accused you of removing her name as a co-author after she made significant contributions to the work. He then outlined the evidence Sarah had submitted, the shared draft 1.2 with both our names, the email snippets, and the Google Docs link. As he spoke, Sarah nodded sadly, occasionally wiping a tear from her eye. It was a masterful performance. My blood boiled, but I kept my face expressionless, remembering my plan to stay calm and rational. Miss Jenkins, Dean Thompson prompted, would you like to reiterate your account for the committee? Sarah took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. Yes, thank you. My name, and I started discussing this paper over 6 months ago. I encouraged them to pursue the topic. We met several times, brainstorming ideas, discussing research methodologies. I helped with the literature review, suggesting key papers. I even drafted parts of the introduction and outlined some of the policy implications. I sent my name, draft 1.2, which had both our names on it, for their review. I thought we were a team. I was shocked and heartbroken when I saw the final submission, with only my name on it. It felt like a complete betrayal of our collaborative effort. She paused, her voice cracking slightly. I just wanted credit for my work. It feels terrible to have to do this, but I couldn't let my contributions be erased. She made it sound so plausible, so hurt. I wanted to scream. "Thank you, Miss Jenkins," Dean Thompson said. He then turned to me. "My name. You've heard the allegations and seen the evidence. What is your response?" I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Dean Thompson. First, I want to state unequivocally that Sarah Jenkins did not co-author my paper. She did not contribute a single word to the writing, nor did she perform any of the original research or data analysis. This paper is entirely my own work." I continued, methodically presenting my counter-evidence. "Regarding the shared draft 1.2, I never created that file, nor did I ever see it before it was presented by Miss Jenkins. My own file naming convention and version control system are completely different, as evidenced by these screenshots of my project folder. I slid over a printed sheet showing my file structure. My system shows no file remotely similar to the one she presented. As for the email correspondence, I never received the email where Miss Jenkins supposedly sent me draft 1.2. Nor did I send the reply email, thanking her for her input. I have searched my entire inbox and sent folder, and these emails do not exist in my records. I believe they have been fabricated or digitally altered. I showed them printouts of my email search results, clearly showing no such correspondence." Sarah scoffed softly. "My copies are legitimate. Your email client might have deleted them. Or perhaps," I countered, looking directly at her, "they never existed in my inbox in the first place, because they were never sent to me." I pressed on. "Regarding the Google Docs link, I have no recollection of ever accessing a shared document with Miss Jenkins for this project. My university account may have viewed it, but I believe my account was compromised, or she somehow accessed my computer remotely to click that link, thereby creating a false digital footprint. The document itself, as you can see, is almost entirely blank, hardly indicative of a collaborative shared workspace." Finally, I said, "My research proposal for this paper, submitted to the department months ago, clearly lists only my name as the sole author. My ethics board application, which was approved, also lists only me as the researcher. These are official university documents, created long before any of these alleged collaborations took place, proving my intention and declaration of sole authorship from the very beginning." I handed over copies of these official documents. Dean Thompson and the committee head exchanged glances. They looked at my evidence, then at Sarah's. The committee head, a woman with sharp eyes, spoke for the first time. "Miss Jenkins, do you have any official documentation, like a shared research proposal or ethics application, that lists both your names as co-authors?" Sarah hesitated. "Number, we didn't do a formal joint proposal. We just worked together, informally at first, and then it grew into a full collaboration. So, all your evidence is digital correspondence and a single draft that you claim was shared." The committee head pressed. "Yes, and my personal account of our collaboration," Sarah said, her voice firmer now. "I trusted my name. We were friends. I never thought I'd need formal agreement." She looked at me, a flicker of something like defiance in her eyes. "This is just their way of trying to cover up their plagiarism." "I am not covering up anything," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I am trying to defend myself against a malicious and false accusation. You fabricated evidence, Sarah. You abused my trust. The only time you had access to my computer was when I was sick, and I believe you used that opportunity to copy my work and create this fake draft." Sarah's face hardened. "That's a ridiculous and offensive accusation. You are grasping at straws. I was trying to be a good friend." The meeting continued for another hour, a back and forth of accusations and denials. My evidence felt logical, but Sarah's was tangible even if fabricated. Dean Thompson kept a poker face. The committee head seemed to be weighing both sides. As the meeting concluded, Dean Thompson informed me they would review all the evidence and make a decision within a week. This is a serious matter. My name, he concluded. We will consider everything carefully. I walked out of that office feeling hollowed out. I had presented my truth, but had it been enough? Sarah's performance had been so convincing. Her manufactured evidence looked so real. I had stared into the eyes of someone I once trusted, and seen only a calculating, cold determination to destroy me. The betrayal was no longer just a wound. It was a gaping chasm, threatening to swallow my entire future. The stone wall of their skepticism felt impenetrable. The week that followed the meeting was a living hell. Every minute stretched, heavy with dread. I couldn't focus on my classes, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My phone was a tormentor, constantly checked, constantly disappointing me by not ringing with Dean Thompson's decision. The university's warning about not discussing the matter hung over me like a dark cloud, isolating me. I couldn't talk to my parents about it. They knew I was working on a big paper, knew how much it meant to me. How could I tell them now that it was embroiled in a plagiarism scandal, that I was accused of something so heinous? I imagined their disappointment, their heartbreak. It was too much to bear alone. My friends noticed my change. I was withdrawn, quiet, perpetually exhausted. When they asked if I was okay, I'd just mumble something about being stressed with finals or a bug. I hated lying, but I felt trapped. Some of our mutual friends, those who knew Sarah, started acting differently around me, a little distant, a little wary. I heard whispers, not direct accusations, but veiled comments. Did you hear about Sarah's paper? Apparently, see, here is some drama in the NIV department. Sarah was clearly playing the victim, subtly spreading her story. I could practically hear her telling people with a sad sigh, I just wanted credit for my work and my name completely cut me out. It's so unfair. She was ruining my reputation, brick by painstaking brick, without me being able to defend myself. The academic world, especially at the undergraduate level, is a small community. Reputations are fragile, built on trust and hard work. An accusation of plagiarism, even if unproven, was a smear that could stick forever. I felt like I was walking around with a giant scarlet P on my forehead. My thesis advisor, Professor Evans, was the only one I could somewhat speak to. He was my mentor for the paper, and he knew how much work I had put in. After the meeting, I sent him a brief email stating that there was an academic integrity investigation regarding my paper, that I was accused of plagiarism, and that I was innocent. I didn't mention Sarah by name, respecting the university's directive. He replied promptly, his tone serious. I understand this is a difficult time. My name, know that I have full faith in your integrity. I have seen your meticulous work and dedication throughout this project. Let me know if here is anything I can do to support you within the university's guidelines. His words were a small lifeline in a sea of despair. It wasn't much, but it was something. Someone believed me. But belief wasn't evidence. I spent my days replaying the meeting in my head, every word, every glance. I kept thinking about Sarah's smug expression when she claimed I had deleted her emails. How could I prove they were never there? How could I prove she fabricated everything? Then a tiny flicker of hope, almost swallowed by the darkness, the Google Docs link. The blank document titled Climate Change Project shared workspace. The activity log showed Sarah Jenkins created document. Then Sarah Jenkins edited document. Then you viewed document. My mind snagged on that last bit. You viewed document. I had no memory of it. No memory of clicking any such link. But my university account had accessed it. How? I remembered something from a cybersecurity lecture earlier in the year. If someone knew your password, or if you logged into a compromised machine, they could access your accounts. But I was diligent with my passwords. I used strong, unique ones, and two-factor authentication for my main university login. But what if she didn't need my password? What if she used her access? Sarah was a senior, heavily involved in research labs. What if she had access to some sort of shared lab computer, or a university system that had a vulnerability? It was a long shot, but I was desperate. I started looking into university IT policies, trying to understand how Google Docs tracking worked, how IP addresses were logged, whether there were any security logs I could access. Of course, as a student, I couldn't access them directly. But maybe my advisor could. Or maybe Dean Thompson's office had access to those kinds of logs. The other major piece of her evidence was the shared draft 1.2 PDF. How did she get a copy of my paper to put her name on it? The only scenario was when I was sick. I remember her sitting by my desk. Could she have quickly copied it to a USB drive? Most students had them. I felt a surge of cold fury. This wasn't just opportunism. This was a premeditated plan. She had been building this case against me, meticulously creating fake evidence, all while acting like my supportive friend. The depth of her deceit was truly staggering. It made my skin crawl to think of her smiling at me, offering advice, all while planning to steal my work and then frame me. The stress was immense. I felt constantly on the verge of tears, or a rage-fueled breakdown. My academic future, which I had worked so hard to build, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. The university's decision, whatever it was, would define the next phase of my life. If they sided with Sarah, it was expulsion. My dreams of grad school, a career in environmental science shattered. My parents' sacrifices wasted. My name tarnished forever. I tried to visualize the possible outcomes. If I was expelled, what would I do? Go home? Start over somewhere else? How would I explain this to future employers or other universities? The thought was paralyzing. I realized I couldn't just wait. I needed to find a way to proactively fight back, to find the smoking gun that would expose Sarah's lies. The stone wall I hit in the meeting wasn't going to break itself. I had to find a sledgehammer, and fast, because the silence from the dean's office was deafening, and every passing moment felt like a step closer to professional death. The silence from the academic integrity office was truly deafening. Every ping of my phone, every new email made my heart lurch. I was trapped in this agonizing limbo, my future hanging by a thread. But despair slowly began to give way to a desperate, burning need for justice. I couldn't just wait for them to decide my fate based on Sarah's lies. I had to find a way to expose her. My thoughts kept circling back to the evidence Sarah had presented. The faked draft 1.2 and the phantom emails, especially the one where my account supposedly viewed the blank Google Doc. How could I prove her malicious fabrication? I decided to start with the Google Doc. If my university account had indeed accessed it, there had to be some sort of log, an IP address, a timestamp. It might not prove that I didn't click it, but if the IP address was from a different location than my dorm or my usual campus spots, it could be a clue. Or if the access time was suspicious, I remembered a senior IT student, Alex, who worked part-time at the university's help desk. He was a tech wizard, always tinkering, always knew how to get obscure information. I decided to take a huge risk and approach him. I couldn't reveal the whole story, but maybe I could frame it as a cybersecurity concern. I cornered him in the computer lab. "Hey Alex," I started, trying to sound casual. "Quick question for you. If someone's university Google Docs account shows they viewed a document, even if they don't remember doing it, is there a way to see details like the IP address or login location?" Alex, always calm, considered it. Usually Google Docs activity logs are pretty detailed. Admins can see a lot. IP, browser, device type, sometimes even approximate location. Why?
Worried about a phishing scam?
Something like that, I mumbled, just trying to track down a weird anomaly. A blank document I supposedly viewed. "It's driving me crazy." "Well," he said, "as a student, you can't access those logs directly. But if it's a legitimate security concern, the IT department could probably pull them for Dean Thompson's office if they request it. For something like a security breach investigation, they'd have that info." This was a glimmer of hope. If the Dean's office hadn't done a full IT forensics check, this could be my path. I needed to push them to do it. Next, I tackled the fabricated email. I had printed out my own email logs showing no trace of them. But Sarah had produced screenshots. How could I prove her screenshots were fake or manipulated? This was much harder, unless she used a tool to spoof the sender address. It would be difficult for a regular user to prove. But maybe a forensic email expert could. This was getting beyond my capabilities and budget. Then a memory surfaced, something small, seemingly insignificant at the time. A few months ago, Sarah had casually mentioned a coding project she was working on. Something about automating tasks for a student research group she was involved with. She had even joked about learning to make machines do your dirty work. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, it sounded chilling. Could she have used some kind of script or bot to send those fake emails? Or even to log into my account and click that Google Docs link? It was a long shot. But I was desperate. I also revisited the shared draft 1.2 PDF. I examined every pixel of the printout Dean Thompson had given me. The font was correct. The layout was correct. The layout was correct. It was a perfect copy of my early writing, but with her name added. And the file name. Climate Change Paper. Digraft 1.2 IL name. Sarah Jenkins. My file naming convention never used 1.2 or included other people's names. This was another small but consistent discrepancy. Then I remembered something else. My personal laptop had a detailed file history. Not just the date I last saved, but the date created, date modified. I opened my earliest actual drafts of the paper. They were all created weeks, sometimes months, before Sarah's shared draft 1.2 was allegedly sent. The metadata on my files would show my continuous work, from concept to completion, without any collaborative versions. If she had simply copied my work and added her name, her draft 1.2 would have a creation date that was much later than my original file creation date, even if the content within it was an earlier version of my paper. This would be a major inconsistency. I spent hours carefully documenting the metadata of my own files, screenshotting properties, dates, times. It was painstaking, but I knew it was crucial. This wasn't just about my word against hers. This was about digital forensics. I also thought about witnesses. Who had seen me working alone? Everyone. I was practically a hermit during the intense writing phase. But who had seen Sarah not working with me? That was harder to prove. But one person stood out. Professor Davies, my intro to ecology professor. He was known for being a stickler for academic integrity and very observant. He had encouraged me on this project from the very beginning. I had talked to him occasionally about my progress. He had never seen Sarah with me discussing the paper. Could also vouch for my meticulousness and independent work ethic. I drafted an email to him, carefully worded, asking if he could attest to my independent work on the paper, without mentioning the plagiarism scandal directly. The next step was to send another more detailed email to Dean Thompson, respectfully requesting that the university's IT department conduct a forensic analysis of the Google Docs access logs for my account, and also to verify the metadata of the shared draft 1.2 file submitted by Sarah, specifically its creation and modification dates, compared to my own documented file history. I made sure to include my own documented metadata and email search results. It felt like a long shot, but I was fighting for my life. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, could chip away at Sarah's carefully constructed lie. The waiting was still excruciating, but now, at least, I was fighting back. The rage that had been simmering was now focused, channeled into a desperate search for the truth. I needed to find that smoking gun before her lies consumed me completely. My email to Dean Thompson, requesting further forensic analysis, felt like a desperate plea, but it was all I had left. I attached all my meticulously collected data, screenshots of my consistent file naming, metadata of my earliest drafts proving sole authorship from day one, and the email search results that showed no trace of Sarah's alleged correspondence. A day later, Dean Thompson's office replied. The email was curt, stating they had received my request and would consider it as part of their ongoing investigation. No promises, no specific timeline, more waiting. But then an unexpected lifeline. Professor Davies, my ecology professor, replied to my email. "Dear my name," he wrote. "I was disturbed to hear of your current situation. While I cannot comment on the specifics of the investigation, I can certainly attest to your consistent and independent dedication to your climate change research paper. You regularly discussed your progress with me, sought my advice on research design, and demonstrated an impressive level of self-sufficiency throughout the project. I never observed any collaborative work between you and Miss Jenkins on this specific paper, nor did you ever indicate that it was a joint effort. I will be happy to provide this statement to the Academic Integrity Office if requested. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Credible witness, a professor who knew my work ethic and saw my process. It wasn't direct proof of Sarah's fabrication, but it strongly supported my claim of sole authorship. I immediately forwarded Professor Davies' email to Dean Thompson's office, respectfully suggesting that they contact him as a witness. Days crawled by. The tension was unbearable. I tried to go to classes, but my mind was elsewhere. I saw Sarah around campus, looking perfectly calm, sometimes even giving me a faint, pitying look. Each time, I felt a fresh wave of nausea. Then, a week after my last email, I received another call from Dean Thompson, my heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The decision. "Hello, my name and K," he said, his voice as neutral as ever. "We have reviewed the additional information you provided, and we have conducted some further inquiries based on your request." I held my breath. "Firstly," he continued, "we contacted Professor Davies, who provided a statement regarding your independent work on the paper. This aligns with your account of sole authorship. a tiny spark of hope flickered within me. Secondly, regarding the Google Docs link, our IT department conducted a forensic analysis of the access logs for your university account. While your account did indeed view the document Miss Jenkins created, the IP address associated with that access point was from a campus lab computer. Furthermore, the log shows that Miss Jenkins' university account was logged into that same computer, within minutes of your account accessing the document. This raises serious questions about how your account accessed the document. My jaw dropped. Campus lab computer. Sarah's account logged in minutes before. She had used a shared computer, logged into her account, opened the blank Google Doc. Then almost immediately, logged into my account on that same computer, likely using saved credentials or by looking over my shoulder at some point. Or even a simple keylogger if she was really devious, to click that link, creating a false trail. It was brilliant and horrifying. And thirdly, Dean Thompson went on, the metadata of the shared draft 1.2 PDF provided by Miss Jenkins. Our IT forensics team extracted the creation and modification dates. It appears that while the document content itself is indeed an earlier version of your paper, the file was created and modified on a date significantly later than your original versions. And crucially, it was created on a computer that appears to be registered to Miss Jenkins. My hands started to tremble. This was it, the smoking gun. Sarah hadn't just added her name. She had copied my paper, resaved it on her own computer with a new title and her name, and then presented it as an earlier draft of a shared document. Her lies were unraveling, one digital thread at a time. Based on this new information, Dean Thompson said, his voice still calm but with a new undertone of gravity, the Academic Integrity Committee has decided to dismiss the plagiarism charges against you, my name. A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Dismissed. It was over. I was innocent. However, he continued and my stomach tightened again. Given the serious nature of Miss Jenkins' actions, the fabrication of evidence, the misrepresentation of facts, and the attempted framing of another student, we have opened a separate investigation into her conduct. This is a very serious offense, far more severe than the initial plagiarism claim. It constitutes academic fraud and could result in her immediate expulsion. My mind reeled. Expulsion. My mind reeled. Expulsion. For Sarah. The tables had turned dramatically and unexpectedly. You will receive an official letter confirming the dismissal of the charges against you by the end of the day, Dean Thompson concluded. We appreciate your cooperation and your diligence in providing the necessary information. I hung up, my hand shaking violently. It was over. The nightmare was finally in. The weight that had been crushing me for weeks lifted, leaving me lightheaded. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run through the streets shouting my innocence. But amidst the overwhelming relief, a cold sadness settled in. Sarah, the mentor, the friend, the person I had trusted implicitly, had tried to destroy me. And now her own future was on the line, because of her own malicious actions. It was a bittersweet victory. Justice was served, but it came at a painful cost. The wound of betrayal wouldn't heal quickly. The image of her tearful, innocent facade in the meeting, now knowing the extent of her deception, was burned into my mind. Cracks in her facade had become a chasm, exposing the snake beneath. The official letter arrived that afternoon. It was stark and clear. The Academic Integrity Committee has formally dismissed the allegations of plagiarism against you regarding your paper. The socioeconomic impact of climate change on coastal communities in the Gulf region. Confirmed that my record would remain clear, and that the university considered the matter closed regarding my involvement. A huge burden lifted, but the emotional scars were still raw. The news about Sarah spread through the department like wildfire, though the official university announcement was vague, citing violations of the academic integrity policy. No one directly said, Sarah Jenkins tried to frame my name for plagiarism, but the whispers were loud enough. Sarah's carefully constructed image, the brilliant, helpful senior, crumbled. She went from being the sympathetic victim to the cunning villain overnight. I didn't see her after that. I heard she withdrew from the university, probably to avoid the formal expulsion process and the permanent mark on her transcript. Her prestigious grad school acceptance was revoked. Her academic career, the one she had so meticulously built, was over. She lost everything, not because of me, but because of her own malicious choices. It was a strange feeling. There was no triumph, no elation, only a profound sense of exhaustion and a lingering sadness. I had won, but at what cost? My trust in people, especially those I admired, was shattered. The innocence I once had, the belief in the inherent goodness of others, was gone. The healing process was slow. I still felt a phantom ache in my stomach when my phone rang. I still felt a flicker of paranoia when I saw a familiar face, wondering if they knew, if they judged. But slowly, gradually, things started to shift. My friends, especially those who had initially been distant, apologized. Liam, the mutual friend who had texted me about Sarah being upset, came to me with genuine remorse. I am so sorry. I totally misjudged the situation, he said. Sarah was really good at making it sound like she was the victim. I should have known you'd never do something like that. Their apologies helped, slowly stitching up the frayed edges of my social life. Professor Evans was a rock. Continued to support me, offering to write new letters of recommendation, emphasizing my original research and the integrity I showed throughout the ordeal. He made sure I knew my work was valued, and that this incident, while terrible, did not define me. I decided to take some time off after the semester ended. Not a full gap year, but a summer to clear my head, to process everything. I went home, spent time with my family. I finally told my parents the full story. They were horrified, then relieved, and finally incredibly proud of how I handled myself, how I fought for my truth. Their unwavering support was a much-needed balm for my wounded spirit. During that summer, I revisited my paper, the one that had caused so much pain. At first, I couldn't even look at it. It was tainted. But then I forced myself. I read it again critically, objectively, and slowly the pride began to return. It was still my work, my research, my voice. It was a good paper. A very good paper. A very good paper. A very full, uphold-me-natured paper. I decided to submit it to an undergraduate research journal. A small one, but a start. It was accepted. Seeing my name, and only my name on the published paper, was a powerful moment of reclaiming my achievement. It was a tangible victory, a physical manifestation of my hard work and integrity. I learned a lot from this experience. I learned about the dark side of ambition, how far some people will go to achieve their goals, even at the expense of others. I learned that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. But I also learned about my own resilience. I found a strength I didn't know I possessed, a fierce determination to fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed stacked against me. My academic future was no longer in question. I was back on track for grad school, my passion for environmental science still burning, albeit with a new, cautious fire. The incident with Sarah Jenkins left a scar, a deep, painful reminder of betrayal. But it didn't break me. It made me stronger, more vigilant, and more appreciative of genuine connections and hard-won achievements. My name was on my paper, as it always should have been. And my future, though momentarily threatened, was once again firmly in my own hands. The story of betrayal was over, but the story of resilience had just begun.